Okay, I would like to call to order the Infrastructure Committee meeting for Wednesday, March 14th, 2018. All committee members are present. As well, we have some special guests this evening. Our Chief Administrative Officer joins us, Mike Kirkopoulos, Director Graham, Walter Neubauer, our Manager of Technical Services, Carrie Beattie, our Senior Communications Advisor, and Gary Del Bianchi, our Deputy Clerk. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none, do any members have any changes to the order of business? There are no delegations this evening. We have no correspondence. Let's jump right into the reports. First report is PW 18-07, the Prudhome's Water Main Upgrade Design Project Award. Are there any questions from committee members? Councillor Patrick.
Through you, Chair Bernay, just curious why we're going with the 1, 2, 3 for the fifth company on the RFP results.
Dr. Graham.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, good question. I guess the best thing I can tell you, it's really value for money when we look at these RFPs. So they're a request for proposals submitted by consultants. And what we want to do is make sure we're getting the best value for money. And this particular proposal really stood out amongst the lower ones for a number of reasons. This particular firm has a lot of experience. It's a big firm. They have a lot of expertise in terms of resources to draw on because this particular project is quite complex. We're building about 6-7 kilometers of water main. We have to cross under the QEW at Jordan Road through that area. We have to either go across or over the Jordan Harbor. We have railway tracks to cross, so it's pretty complicated. So we want to make sure we have a consultant who has that level of expertise. One thing that stood out, just I'll share with committee on this particular proposal, was they actually included a cost benefit analysis with their work to ensure that we develop the best strategy for crossing, say, the Jordan Harbor. You know, there's some options there, whether we go under the harbor or we strap the water main on the overpass and things like that. So again, I guess the general answer would be we just felt it was the best proposal for the money.
Continue, Judy.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. Just so a couple of concerns is that you know, we want to be open and we want to be transparent when we're doing tenders. So, you know, the last line or the last paragraph on page 4, you know, the town's currently working with them on Conkle Creek and Moyer Road. So are they then privy to information that the other ones aren't, where they can you know, scope their package? And I appreciate the value for money audit, but then is there something then within, and I'm just being the devil's advocate here, is there something within our tender writing that the other companies didn't pick up on? Because this, you know, it's like a $50,000 gap. So that, yeah. I'm just, and again, I mean, Director Graham, I mean, I go back to that ill-fated grass cutting when we gave it to the grass doctor out in Dunnville, and the lowest price isn't always the best. So, I mean, if you've done a good job of saying that this is why, and if that's going to be that jackpot that we go, you know, with the low tender or the second lowest one, and then we run into cost overruns where it costs us more. If that's, and I think that's what it is, whether I see, you know, both you and Mr. Neubauer shaking your head, then I'm cool with it. So, but just, those are just, you know, as I'm reading through this in a vacuum and thinking, okay, yeah.
Sure, Director Graham. Yeah.
Thank you. Through Mr. Chairman, just back to Councillor Patrireva's comments, just a couple comments from my end. The comments about working with the GHD on the bottom of the page there, I guess what we were trying to just demonstrate to committee that our current, experiences working with this company has been favorable, so that's important when we do look at proposals. Have we worked with the company before? Has the town had a good experience with that service? Just getting back to the cost too, just to highlight, maybe I could point it out, we really experienced very good pricing on these bids. Even though there's some lower ones at the, lower bids, overall we have a really good turnout of bidders, very competitive, and the prices are very good. If you compare them to our budget, and with our budget we try and look at our past costs and whatnot, I just want the committee to be assured that these are really good prices that you are receiving. And again, I think that speaks a lot to getting council being committed to getting the budget approved early in the year, and staff's able to get out to the market very early with this. So,
Thank you. Councillor McMillan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Because this is the Prudham's development, is there any portion of this that is dependent upon the development that is planned for that property? Therefore, is the developer of that property responsible for any of the expenses that are incurred by the taking on the water main upgrade?
through Mr. Chairman, yes, a big portion of this project is funded by the development charges as it relates to the Prudham's development. This project is really required to provide fire flow protection for Prudham's, so that's really the trigger for this project, is the Prudham's development.
But rather than the development charges, can it be charged right directly back to the developer rather than development charges?
Through Mr. Chairman, that is a good comment. Basically, when the developer develops the property and pays for their building permits, they'll be paying development charges. So in essence, they'll be paying for it through development charges. I don't know if that makes sense, but when they develop the lands, they will be paying development charges, which will pay for this portion of water main as it relates to development charges. What we want to do is get out front of this, start getting prepared for all the servicing upgrades that's going to be required to support Prudham's. So it is important that we get the design started. It's a large project, and the water main has to be in place before we can issue building permits in Prudham's for the fire flow situation. So that's the main reason why we want to get this started.
I thought it would be a direct charge to the developer and not the development charges. So it's not. It'll be development charges that will pay for it rather than a direct. I just thought that this was work that was dependent upon what the developer needed to do, so he was going to have to pay for what was going on here. And then development charges is quite something different.
But in essence, just to take what Councillor McMillan is saying, so like this is the design work.
Yep.
So when the tender actually comes out, let's say the tender comes out and it's a $5.5 million project, is that a three-way split between the region, the town of Lincoln, and the developer?
Through Mr. Chairman, so the way the development charge study has identified this project is it's basically development charges are going to pay, I think, somewhere around 75% of this project. And then there's a benefit to the existing residents who will be able to connect to this water main or have a connection currently on portions of this water main. But I think it's important to note when the developer starts developing those lands, that developer has to pay their development charge share. So they'll be paying the development charges for this project in essence.
But that comes after the fact. So the work is done, we would pay for it and then collect the fees later on.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor McMillan?
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
Mary Easton?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like some clarification on the fact that this is the design work. The Has there been any activity from the developer that says, we want to get started on this early, so we're going to do the work, and then we're going to charge back through the forgiveness of DCs? Is any of that involved at this stage, or does that come when the actual work is done? Because it was my understanding that they were doing some they were going to be doing the work, and then we were going to be giving them relief on the DCs that equaled. Is that correct?
Through Mr. Chairman, it would really come when the work is done from the developer. If that-
After the design work
Yes.
phase? Okay.
Yes, this is, if I may, this is more, we were getting prepared for the work, so we
Right.
have to get the design started.
Okay.
It's going to take a while, so we want to be prepared for when it's time to do the work, that we're ready
Okay.
to go.
But in the meantime, there are built, through you, Mr. Chairman, there's permits that are required. They will pay for those permits and therefore pay for a portion of this work. So am I clear that it's 75% of the design work that's being covered through the permits? Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, I believe the split for the development charges is about 75%.
Okay.
And then there's about 30% that we would pay through water reserves, because there is a benefit to the existing community to have this water main. That's how the development charge study has identified the project, for a cost benefit.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I have,
I'm just going to go to our CAO just for one split second.
Oh, okay,
Mike,
sure.
something to add.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to kind of provide a little bit of clarity as it relates to the budget piece of it. I think sometimes when we have various projects, you'll recall us sharing, there's DC charges that we recoup, collect, and we use that to offset costs, and then there's what we call DC credits, which is what you were referencing, Mary Easton, and typically on the design side, it's DC charges that are used to pay for that. On the construction side, depending on the arrangement with the particular developer and what sort of accelerated timeline we're looking at, we often use DC credits and the crediting of that if the developer agrees to front-end the costs of those things. So those are the various ways in which we pay for infrastructure like this, but I just wanted to add that to Director Graham's comments.
okay, that's very good. Now, Mr. Chairman, I want to talk about the geotechnical investigation. Now, at the region, on 3 separate occasions, in retrospect, there have been major additional costs to projects. And in each case, it was determined that the geotechnical investigations were not comprehensive enough. There weren't enough boreholes. And I'm wondering about the status of the topography here, particularly since it's going under the highway, and what could possibly be at risk, if anything.
Through
you,
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman, Mary Easton's raised some great comments. I mean, the geotechnical investigation is going to be key to the success of the project and understanding what you're dealing with. So once we have our consultant on board, they'll help us determine a good terms of reference for a comprehensive geotechnical assessment in this area. But yeah, it's going to be really important for the highway crossing. We need to have a really good understanding of all the groundwater and what the soils are like, so we can, you know, cross that area without any negative impacts to the highway corridor. Another unique to this project as well is the Jordan Harbor crossing. Whether we go under the harbor or we can attach the water main to the overpass of the bridge. So yes, for sure, the geotech is going to be very important.
Okay,
Yes.
to that end, Mr. Chairman, $50,000 just doesn't look like a lot. I don't really think that I recall what the cost of each bore is, but this is a big project, and that just doesn't seem like it's going to be enough. How would committee members judge whether we've got enough money in there?
Through Mr. Chairman, so for this particular project, we actually have $50,000 identified for geotechnical investigation, which is what we anticipate in terms of the scope required for this, but I don't know if that helps.
Well, I mean, I don't have anything technical to offer. I just
Yep.
want to make sure that that there's
Yep.
going to be enough money in there, particularly if the engineers tell us that we need to be a little closer together with some of the holes. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
You're in charge of the technical elements, but certainly it's an area with so much I mean, land, it's all disturbed land that we're dealing with. There's been quite a lot of construction in this area, so I was just a little bit concerned about our risk or exposure. Thanks very much.
Councilor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also certainly picked up on the difference, the $50,000 difference, but, when I hear the director speak about the technical piece of this and the level of confidence, I'm fine with the 140 and especially in light of the fact that it's coming in under budget. I do share Councillor McMillan's question, and I'm really unsure, as to development charges versus pushing a developer to pay for something. I don't quite understand when you do and when you don't, and I'm hearing about projects around the area where the community pushed for the developer to put sidewalks in or push for, and it was outside of the development charges. So maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to the CAO, if there's some sort of rule of thumb or guideline as far as, this is obviously a multi-million-dollar project, and, for, the developer just to pay development charges and not lift another nickel, is that where we're headed?
Sure. Through Mr. Chairman, maybe I'll take a crack at it first and then. Okay. So the development, this servicing upgrade has been identified for a number of years as we envisioned the Prudhoe secondary plan coming into implementation. So if a project has been flagged from a master servicing plan in terms of a growth-related upgrade, the process is it's captured in the development charge study as a growth-related project, which this is what this project is to support development, to support growth. So that's why it's being funded by development charges. Sometimes you may have a project or a development that comes along that we weren't anticipating or didn't envision certain upgrades, and if those upgrades aren't captured in the development charge study, the development charge study is pretty comprehensive. It's almost like a capital plan, if you will, as it relates to infrastructure upgrades. So if it isn't in the development charge study, a lot of times then the developer specific to that proposal would then have to front end the costs for, say, an infrastructure upgrade. I don't know if that helps with clarifying the difference or not, but.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think just to supplement on Director Graham's comments, Councillor, we often get this inquiry from a lot of folks in the community as well, and I think there's elements of a project that are very internal to the project that are very much 100% as a result of the development, and that's often where we push the developer and where they realize those are things that they need to incur costs from and then come to us for some sort of credit if it applies or elsewhere. The sidewalk is an interesting example, and oftentimes in order, we do have some leveraging when we've got major developments to be able to push developers to say we want additional sidewalks. I know in Ward 3 we're looking at a few things like that, definitely with the Phelps development in terms of adding additional sidewalks. So there are some leverage points that we have. For the most part, I think, to echo what Director Graham said, if things are identified within our existing plans and have a benefit to residents outside of just the development, then it's often something we take control of and would want control of to make sure that the design not only benefits the existing development, but also benefits our residents. At the end of the day, we're recouping our costs for a lot of this. It's really how that money is flowing, and in some cases, they're paying for it and we're crediting them, and in other cases, we're paying for it, and we want to have control of certain things that are very much internal to the development. They will pay and we will credit. Things that we want to have a control over, like servicing, like some of that subsurface infrastructure that we want to make sure gets done to the level we want it done, we want to have more control, and so we take the effort in making sure the design is what we want it to be.
Thank you for that. And my question is probably higher level than this specific spend, and it's more, It's more, are we being, are we winning with our developers like other communities are, or from what I'm hearing, are? And are we being, almost, too soft on our developers? Things are, we go through the process and we get the development charges and, so maybe it's a bigger discussion around, our developments and are we maximizing the deal for our residents with our developers? And it's not so much we want to be muscly and push them around, but in other communities, they're getting it. And in our community, I'm not sure they're getting it, so it's just that whole, are we missing an opportunity? That's my question.
I mean, through you, Mr. Chairman, I think it's a good point, Councillor. I would tell you, I think where we are in our evolution right now, we are starting to see the benefits of that. We've pushed one particular developer to build a park. When I think of Prokich Park, both the project management of that park, the value add that is going to come as a result of that. So have we been doing it historically? I would tell you no. We were more hoping and begging developers to come to the community to invest. I think now, because we are seeing us turn that corner, we are seeing more people take notice, we are seeing more development interest in the community, our objective and our goal as staff is absolutely to leverage where we can. And I don't see Prokich Park as the only development that we're going to do that. We're going to have similar conversations, I think, when we look at Ashby and Cherry Heights, and that's another one where we've pushed the envelope on a few things, and we've encouraged them to do a few things that at the end of the day they need to be doing, but that we want to make sure we get the best value for that. So you're going to see us do more of that, and I agree with you. It is something that I think our residents expect, and we are in a good ideal position. So we can push for amenities, we can push for different things that historically maybe we weren't getting. So definitely a broader conversation and things that I think as we come forward, in this next round of budgets, we're going to be sharing more of those kind of value-added pieces that we're looking at doing.
Just a final comment, Director Graham just whispered in my ear to make sure that committee members knew that. So what we're talking about here is the design to bring the water main down Jordan Road to the property, but the developer is on the hook to pay for all the water main and everything within the project scope.
I think that was the tact we're taking, in that if the Prudence water main upgrade design was something that we needed to do in order to accommodate the residents in that particular area, then that's a town responsibility, and we're going to pay 100%. But if this is something that is only being done because the developer needs it done, then why isn't he paying 100%? Otherwise, that if it wasn't for the developer, this work would not need to be done. So if it needs to be done because of his project, then why doesn't he pay the whole thing? And over and above the development charges, because the development charges can also come in to when the development actually starts, right in when the buildings are ready to go with the building permits. I think that's where I was coming from anyhow.
Chairman, I don't mean to belabor this, but it was my understanding that that this water line down Jordan Road had been on the books for some time. I thought it was prior to, that it was not connected. That piece was not connected to Prudence Development. Is that incorrect?
Director Graham?
Through Mr. Chairman, so the Prudence, redevelopment of Prudence have always required this water main to be upgraded all the way to Prudence. Now, there is a benefit, and I think that's where some of the assessment comes into, a benefit to existing residents to put a water main along Jordan Road from 4th Avenue to Red Maple, for example, because people who live along there will be able to connect to it and have municipal water. Mm-hmm. And the same would apply from Red Maple all the way towards Prudence. There's an existing water main now, it's too small. But if we upsize it, there is a benefit to those people who are living along that new water main to connect.
And that was, Mr. Chairman, through you, it was my understanding that the original premise was that people on Jordan Road would get the benefit. And so it had been held up because it was anticipated that the other development would be done. Probably this wouldn't be done if it were only to benefit the residents on the street. I recognize that. But it was my understanding that the town had assumed already the responsibility for completing that down to the service road. And therefore, I didn't see that the developer was going to be paying for this part of it.
Through Mr. Chairman, so there is a benefit to the municipality and the residents to have this water main along Jordan Road for sure. It helps loop our system, provides better resilience to our system. We'll have more looping. But the requirement for the entire project is is triggered by Prudhome's, to service Prudhome's.
Okay, so what is done internally by Prudhome's, it's very clear, very cut and dried. What is not done inside the development, the question that's being asked is really, are we paying anything? Why aren't the developers paying at all, correct? So you just answered it, and you said initially that the DC charges were going to pay for this. I'm talking about the piece outside the development at the moment. So DC charges are paying for that. Okay, the town is not paying for that. Taxpayers are not paying for that, correct?
Through Mr. Chairman, if I can just make a correction. So the project, so not internal to Prudhome's, this to get water to Prudhome's.
Right.
It's currently identified in the development charge study that the developer would pay about 75%.
75%,
And the
okay.
existing ratepayers in our existing residents would pay about 25 or 21%.
Okay. All right, so just so I'm clear, Mr. Chairman, Councillor McMillan would like that 20.1% to be covered by the developer as well. Is that right? Through you to Mr. McMillan, to Councillor McMillan?
That's my thought, and because if the development was not going to take place, this work would not be done. Am I correct? Because this has been on the books, but it's being pushed forward because of the development.
Through Mr. Chairman, yeah, it's being triggered by the development. Like I say, if you go from 4th Avenue to, say, Jordan Station, there'll be a benefit if we put a water main in there for the existing people there because they don't currently have water. If you can picture from 4th Avenue to Red Maple. So that's where your benefit to the existing community or the existing residents comes into play. Because if we put a water main there, they'll have an opportunity to have municipal water, which they currently don't have now.
Okay.
So that's why the project isn't 100% developer paid for.
Okay,
So it's the partnership then the developer is going to take on the expense of the part that's going to service his.
Exactly.
We will take on the expense that's going to service our residents. Okay.
okay, but Mr. Chairman, I just want to make the point that I believe that what Councillor McPherson is saying and what other people are saying and why this continues to come up is that we're almost better off not to talk about a dozen people on Jordan Road and just say this is being done because of the development. Because this question of who's paying for what continues to come up as if there is some imbalance here. And I had never seen it as an imbalance, but maybe it is if you're only talking a dozen homes. So I think we're going to have a discussion about this because if the belief is that there's another way that we should just be taking a hard line and saying to the developers at this time, particularly when there's no land available, you're going to pay 100% of this. It's not a discussion for tonight, but clearly this is muddy. It's not 100% clear. Thank you. I won't say any more.
Councillor Patriven.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, isn't this an opportunity, though, I mean, at 21 to 25% of our taking the bill, to provide water to some of the businesses presently that don't have it. I'm thinking Harbor Estates. I mean, we could run a cost-benefit analysis of the increased water charges to those places that will be serviced on it. We'll probably show that more than we'll pay for our share of the extension and the upgrade. And it hasn't been fast-tracked because this has been something that's been on the books since 2003. In every capital plan, it's been there, Jordan Road upgrade. And then I guess my other question is, or not a question, but a comment, is that maybe, just maybe, by this water main going in, we will get rid of some of those cowboy connections that already exist in the East End, that are running laterals all over Hell's Half Creations to connect. So maybe that's a precedent too, to say, okay, we've got this, and here's your opportunity to come on board, because remember, we are the managers of the water system. And if someone has one of these cross connections, or someone has one of these cowboy laterals, that God forbid something goes wrong, each one of us are liable. So.
Did you have something more, Councilor McPherson? I don't know. I saw your fingers going up.
So the cowboy connections are over in the Bridgeport area. I'm not sure they would, they would connect to this. So, I think that if this was planned back in 2003, now I'm not sure if there was a connection to the Prudhome's property at that time. So if this was planned, then, it was going to happen at some point, and we would have been on the hook for 100% of it, right? So, the fact that a development, and I'm trying to see, how this thing got to where we are today. So if there's definitely a benefit for a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot of people, for the residents between 4th and Red Maple, you said, Dave?
Yes.
So it's not Harbor Estates. It's not. It's Red Maple at the tracks. So it's those homes or those farms between 4th and Red Maple. That's a fairly short area there.
Oh, Harbor's got water now?
Harbor's got water now?
Yes.
Harbor Estates?
Through Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, so currently there's no water main between 4th Avenue and Red Maple. So this will allow us to have a new water main between Red Maple and 4th Avenue, again, to benefit those residents, to benefit us for looping our system, et cetera. There's existing water main from Red Maple or Jordan Station all the way to Prudhome's now. Problem is, it's not big enough. The pipe's too small. So if we upsize the pipe as per this proposal or this initiative, everybody who lives along that current pipe, so to speak, will have an increased water flow and an increased fire flow opportunity.
So, if I may, will it help us in our Bridgeport pumping station issue?
Through Mr.
Through you,
Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
It's somewhat unrelated.
Okay.
That's wastewater.
Okay.
This is the
I was
drinking
hoping
water. Yeah.
that it would, but, okay.
Through Mr. Chairman, I mean, just to maybe try to encapsulate and tie all together where we're at, I mean, there's some definite specific issues as it relates to this particular development, and I think the conversation this evening was helpful. I'm hoping it provided some clarity on the issue. You'll recall during the budget process, we highlighted to you, out of all the capital projects we have, anywhere from 10 to 15 million on any given year, those are funded through a variety of things. We levy a small piece of that in the $1 million to $1.5 million range. The rest is made up by senior levels of government / DCs / other funding pools. And so I think to the question around Prudhome's, who's paying for the servicing that is required to move Prudhome's along, the answer to that is the developer. I think it's a very simple answer. I have no problem sharing that. I have no problem explaining how will flow, how that money is collected, and there's two ways, as I said, of collecting it. They pay in advance and receive a credit, or we pay and we get the money from them with the appropriate interest and kind of accrual process that is worked into the Development Charges Act. There is a Development Charges Act through the province of Ontario that governs very specifically what we can charge, what we can't charge. You'll recall that we're also looking to maximize the ability of DCs we can collect, and so we have very aggressively and proactively gone out and done and updated and are currently in the process of meeting with stakeholders to look at our DC bylaw, which was to expire in 2019. We wanted that done sooner so that we increase the amount of development charges we're collecting, because we've got a window now of development starting to happen. Prudhome's is one of it, Vista Ridge, Cherry Heights, Lincoln Estates, and a few others in the Jordan area. So we will be maximizing the amount of DCs we're collecting. We're going to be collecting significantly more than we currently are right now, and I think that's also a message that we can make sure is communicated out there. I haven't heard to the same level of extent, maybe some members of council, the concern on Prudhome's. I have one or two people who reach out and who ask about the financing around Prudhome's, and we can make sure when we go back and address some of the other issues in the public presentations, we proactively address that piece as well.
Thank you, Mr. Seo. So we have a motion moved by Councillor McPherson and seconded by Mayor Easton that PW 18-07 Prudhome's Water Main Upgrade Design Project Award be received as information, and that the firm of GHD be retained to provide engineering design services at a cost of $140,928 excluding HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal the contract documents on behalf of the municipality. Your pleasure on the motion? Our next report this evening is PW 18-08, the Red Maple Avenue, Bridgeport Drive, and Queen Victoria Urbanization Design Project Award. Are there any questions from committee members? Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just, another really good news story here with, a budget of X and a spend of X minus, very, very nice. And also timely with what we heard at the Ward 3 meeting, the replacement of the water main, the 150, is that millimeter AC water main replacement, and then the evaluation of the existing sanitary sewer system, I think will be key to our proposed open meeting coming the end of April. So timely and, really great to get this out and get the quotes you got, Mr. Director, and I'm all in.
No other questions? Okay, we have a motion moved by Mayor Easton and seconded by Councillor McPherson that PW 18-08 Red Maple Avenue, Bridgeport Drive, and Queen Victoria Urbanization Design Project Award be received as information, and that the firm of UEM be retained to provide engineering design services at a cost of $56,792 excluding HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal the contract documents on behalf of the municipality. Your pleasure on the motion? And that is carried. The next report is PW 18-09, Lincoln Avenue South Urbanization Design Project Award. Are there any questions from committee members? Councillor Patrick.
Thank you, Chair Bernay. Just a question, let me turn this on because you can't hear me because I'm such a Violet. We had our meeting for F&A this afternoon, and I'm kind of jumping ahead. Talked about procurement. Any rationale, or I mean, this was top of mind. Why? Okay, I get the first one because it had very extreme nuances of the two crossings. But any reason why we didn't bundle these two? To say, okay, well, we've got a road urbanization, two projects in the town, pretty much the same, a water main, curb, gutter, sewer. I mean, they're great prices, but just, I think maybe, and maybe we missed out a little bit on a further efficiency. And then that way, the same engineering company, now you've got committed to two projects. So I'm just curious. Though, I mean, they're pretty close. I mean, the one was number one again, but it's $30 or $60 or something. But just curious why we didn't put them together, or if we might do that in the future.
Director Graham.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. No, good thinking, good question. I mean, staff tries to bundle wherever we can and look at those economies of scale, so it's important that the committee knows that we do that wherever we can. In this particular case, we do want these consultants to be focused on the projects. They aren't, so to speak, in close proximity. One's East End, one's in Beansville. Sometimes we have concerns if we have one consultant with too many projects, it can lose some focus, so that's some concerns. These are fairly large design exercises, even though they are of similar, their urbanization design. The Red Maple one, for example, is going to require a lot of stormwater management analysis. The I&I reduction strategies that we're trying to build into it. So I think that's some of our concern, is we want our consultants to be focused on the projects. But by all means, we look at this wherever we can, where it makes sense. And that's something we want to continue to do. If we can bulk tender, bulk RFP, so to speak.
Thank you, Director Graham. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion moved by Councillor McMillan and seconded by Councillor Pachariba that PW 18-09 Lincoln Avenue South Urbanization Project Design Project Award be received as information, and that the firm of S. Llewellyn and Associates Limited be retained to provide engineering design services at a cost of $46,290 excluding HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign and seal the contract documents on behalf of the municipality. Pleasure on the motion. And that is carried. The next report is PW 18-10 Public Works Quarterly Project and Program Status Report. Director Graham.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chairman. So if committee members would like to look at the attachments to the report, you'll notice that we've totally updated and reworked the format of our typical quarterly updates for projects and our operational programs. First off, too, I'd also like to thank Carrie Beatty for taking the lead on this and putting a lot of work into this new format and this new style that we'd like to consider moving forward. I really think it looks really good, and it really helps identify key elements of our projects. A couple comments I'd like to make on our new format. Committee members will notice that we've kind of streamed it in themes for our infrastructure. So we have the transportation theme and the environmental safety theme, which is your water and wastewater projects primarily. We've also included a little bit of an overview section, again, just to kind of give a little bit of background on why we're doing it, the importance to the community, and why it's a priority. We've also, again, like typically, but I think we've expanded on it much more robust in terms of the progress and then next steps, and I think what committee can expect staff to be working on over the following quarter when you'll see this again before you. I really informative feature that we've included is referred to as the dashboard. So if you go sort of the end of your project updates for the capital projects, you'll see a little area, and it's called a dashboard, and it gives you some pie graphs. And that's to give committee a bit of a snapshot of kind of the overall status of our projects, you know, which ones are not complete, started, completed, so it kind of gives you a really good overview of where things are at. And we've also included, which I think is really important, is an investment section, and it relates to the 2018 capital investment that Council's committed to. And I think it really demonstrates Council's commitment to investing in infrastructure, and this helps summarizes it, and you know, it can really show Council's commitment to the transportation section of our infrastructure program. We've also, if you kind of scroll to the end, on page 22, you'll see with our operational programs, we've put them in a calendar format, which I think is very useful in terms of it gives committee and the public a better idea on the associated timelines around these different service delivery programs that's occurring within Public Works. So we hope that's more helpful as well. And again, we really hope Council and committee finds this as a tool to use out in the community when you're talking to constituents and being able to refer to projects and where projects are at or different programs are at. We're hoping that's going to be a tool for committee to use. And again, maybe Carrie can speak to it further, but we are doing a lot of communication, and we want to do a lot of communication on our projects using social media and different avenues related to that as we move forward into 2018 in our work program. So I guess, you know, we'd be interested if committee has any feedback on this new format, any comments or maybe elements you'd like to see that aren't included, or any suggestions. We'd be happy to hear from that. So.
Committee members? Councilor first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and comment on the format. I think it's outstanding. You know, puts it very nicely. I mean, I could see myself pinning this up on a bulletin board. You know, really, I could. You know, just to reference. You know, sitting in my office, I ever got a phone call, I could just go to the bulletin board and say, hey, here's where the project's at. Here's what's next. You know, it's fantastic, and I like the dashboard. Dashboards are very popular in our day-to-day work, and to see that dashboard and to have it, you know, I assume it's updated monthly or whatever it is, that we know exactly where the projects are with one click of a mouse. And then, you know, on the last one, what really jumped out at me on the last one was, you know, how much really goes on. And I mean, common sense would tell you this stuff goes on, but how much goes on, you know, in the summer type months, you know, in the May through September months, and how much demand there is on our resources through those months. So it's very graphic to show where we are doing a lot of the work. Now, so those are the comments. I would come back to, you know, the GO Bus stop sidewalk and continue to seek MTO work permit approval. So and I'll group a couple of questions together. Is that a problem? And then the Jordan Village improvement, and I know that's just fresh off the approval announcement, but you know, to keep that rolling, what is our next step? I know it says here RFP planning for detailed design work, but you know, what do we do, and how do we do it? You know, obviously with the region, and how do we pick this thing up as soon as we get the MOE approval and start moving with it? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Director Graham.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman. As it relates to the GO Bus stop, the sidewalk that we want to construct, so we've been working diligently on getting a design complete. We've had conversations with MTO, and we're trying to work out a solution with MTO to put the sidewalk along the service road, the north side of the South Service Road. We've ran into a few snags, but we are continuing to push forward with MTO on that. Currently, you may have noticed some activity happening at the GO Bus stop area so there's work occurring right now, which is anticipated to go into June, I believe, end of June. So one of the stipulations is we can't do any type of work until that work is completed from a Ministry of Labor perspective with different contracts and contractors. So again, we're continuing to push MTO to support our proposal to give us a work permit so we can get geared up to do construction after this work is done in the car lot. So hopefully at our next quarterly update, we'll be able to provide the committee with a much more up-to-date status of where we are with this particular project. As it relates to the Jordan EA, Walter's here tonight, and he's assembling a working group team to get an RFP document put together. We want to make sure that we have a really good RFP going out to the market, because this is a very important project. And we want to ensure that you know, the region is at the table with our RFP, because they're such a significant stakeholder. We also have planning here at Town of Lincoln. We want to ensure planning's part of our team in building the RFP, and as well community services. So that's currently where we are at the moment, and we'll be developing an RFP to go to market to retain a consultant to do the detailed design work.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's good to hear, by the way you're explaining that we're driving that. It's the Town of Lincoln driving that, and along with the partner being the region, as opposed to the other way around. Am I reading that right?
Yep, through Mr. Chairman, exactly right.
Any other questions? Mary Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to ask a question about the Jordan Village improvements. I'd like to understand better how the funding envelope for that is going to work. I don't think I understand who's really paying for what part of that. And I mean, the road work, number 8, I mean, that's a 3-way split. But when we get down into the urbanization of the town, are we 100% responsible for that in the village? Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through Mr. Chairman, as it relates to funding, so as Mayor Easton indicated, so the intersection itself and all that work will be the Niagara region. The municipality will be doing all the local streets, but it's also funded by the development charge as a development charge project, because a lot of this is related to growth, improving the roads for traffic and pedestrians. So again, 19th Street, Snur Lane, which is the new street, Main Street, has also been identified as a growth-related project in our development charge studies. So,
So, Mr. Chairman, just so when we're talking about DCs, Mr. Chairman, we're talking about the Phelps development. So am I to assume that that money has already been put aside, and then Jordan Station, development charges in Jordan Station, would any of that be applied to the Jordan Village or not?
through Mr. Chairman, yes, it would. It would be the development charge fund that the town has from developers. So those developers would be contributing to this project through development charges.
All development in the town?
Through Chairman, yes. Yep.
Okay, when that terminology is used, you know, I don't know why, but for some reason or other, my mind goes to local development that's taking place. And I'm trying to think of other projects where that things wouldn't get done because there was no development going on, so we wouldn't go forward. I'm sorry, I can't give you the specifics. I think I'm just a little bit confused about this, about which development charges, is that only relate to parks? I absolutely need more tuning up on this. I don't really feel that I'm completely clear on where this money is coming from. And I felt that there had to be local improvements happening in order for some of the development charges to go to a project. That we needed Phelps A, and we needed Phelps B, and we needed Phelps C down in Jordan Station in order to pay for this. And I guess the answer is yes, and then you're saying it goes into a big pot, and then it's taken out according to priority. All right, I don't know what I was thinking of. Thank you very much, I've got it. I have it, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I just had a question, Director Graham, with regards to Project 26, the Frost Road Bridge removal. So this is a topic of discussion in a number of our active transportation meetings. So when I look at next steps here, we have a public meeting coming up in 12 or 13 days for the Transportation Master Plan that's going to take place on the 27th and 28th in Jordan and Beamsville. So when I look here, it says notify the residents and seek input on the feasibility of any replacement options through the Transportation Master Plan process. So we have this public meeting taking place. Is there an opportunity for us to reach out to residents so that we could get them at this meeting? I mean, you know, when we talk about getting their input, this is a perfect opportunity. It's a public meeting, but if they don't know about it, so I just my question is, you know, it's kind of the clock is running. We've got about 12 or 13 days before those two public meetings. I just put it out there if there's any opportunity with Carrie in the room as well, is so if we can get that out so that people that do have a concern about what that's going to look like moving forward with that bridge removal at the next step. You know, if we say we're going to do it through the Transportation Master Plan, this is a perfect window.
Through Mr. Chairman, thanks. We'll take that back. Again, the meetings coming up too are sort of some of the start of the public consultation process. There will be opportunity throughout the Transportation Master Plan process to engage. So we'll have that opportunity.
Carrie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we can have a further discussion about maybe doing a direct mail to those residents, though, just to ensure that they're aware that there's an opportunity at that meeting to provide feedback around this topic. I don't see that being an issue.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I guess my last comment is it's just great to see when you look at some adjoining municipalities that are still working on their budget in mid-March, and here we are. You know, we've got our road resurfacing program. We've got Conkle Creek closing this week, and we've already had 5 or 6 jobs that have closed and gone out for tender that are ready to go shovel ready in the month of April. So just a fabulous job. We have a motion moved by Councillor Patrieva and seconded by Councillor McMillan that report PW 18-10, the Public Works Quarterly Project and Program Status Report be received as information. Your pleasure in that motion? That is carried. Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention we were actually piloting this within Public Works, and I don't know if Dave did mention that, but we will, and I'm looking to carry without saying it's going to happen immediately, but we are looking to roll this out through all departments. So you're going to be seeing these types of quarterly updates for each of our departments. Public Works definitely was the guinea pig for Carrie, and I don't know if she's got anything else to add, but I think it'll be a great communication tool for council.
It is, it's good, it's really absolutely great.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, certainly through my initial few months here, I did hear council say that, you know, we need to highlight our projects better. And so we've been sort of looking at how to best do that. So we came up with this format, and I was happy to hear tonight that everyone seems pleased. So we would like to roll that out across all the corporate projects, and so that you'll have that tool available to you as council.
It looks great. It looks great. And I agree with Councillor McPherson, this dashboard, I mean, at our work, it's the new buzzword. It's dashboard. That's all our reporting's coming through as a dashboard so everybody can see it. So it's great to see it. It brings a lot of clarity to things. Are there any notices of motion? Are there any councillor inquiries? Councillor McPherson.
Just quickly, thank you, Mr. Chair. So for next month, we're expecting the region to be here. And is there any need for us to give them things to be ready to talk about? I.e., active transportation through the hollow, or other King Street Vineland, or, I don't know, what the list might be, but rather than truck traffic, thank you very much. That was a hot topic last Tuesday night. To sort of have them come here, and we're not, asking a question that night. It's as, kind of a deer in the headlight. We can enhance the question or enhance the conversation, but can we prep them with, these are some of the items we're going to be wanting to review. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through Mr. Chairman, Councilor McPherson, great suggestion. I'm going to be working with the Director of Transportation and helping prepare for the delegation and making sure they highlight all those topics as it relates to key regional projects in our community, truck traffic, et cetera.
I know when I spoke to Carolyn, she had made it very clear that we're not the only municipality that's talking about having stoplights put in certain areas, whether it's King Street and Stadelmeyer or the report that we looked at going into Drake survey. So in terms of that, I know she said to you guys need to keep pushing that button. So I think that should be a topic of discussion that evening for sure. Councillor Patrieva.
Yeah, having said that, Chair Bernay, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, about all of these projects. Might it make sense that maybe committee jot down its top half dozen projects, send them to Mr. Graham, and then we circulate those through the committee and to see if we've missed anything. And then that will give you kind of your working subset to be able to go to Mr. Tripp and say, okay, here these are coming. So, just like a thing like stoplights, okay? I can think of half a dozen locations. So, but then when you're here that night, if we give them to them ahead of time, then maybe they can come back with a rationale so we list the 6, and then as ward councillors, we can speak to the importance of why, and then maybe that will drive home a point. But if they're sitting here and having to write everything that night, Councillor McPherson, I think that's a great idea that we, kind of pre-arm them with, okay, this is coming. We can provide the background and the rationale, but I wouldn't want to miss anything. So if we, take thoughts, guys, what do you think about that?
I think it's a good idea. Committee members? Director Graham, no issues with that?
Sure.
Okay, so if all committee members could get their lists in, that'd be great. Councillor Patrieva, anything else? No?
No, just Director Graham provided me an update with respect to the development on Cherry Heights and there's kind of slip-ups, but he's on top of it and bylaws on top of it, and they can't be washing the road because they're worried about it freezing, but I mean, there's other mitigating features that they can do. So I appreciate that, Director Graham.
Mayor Easton.
Mr. Chairman, I think that I would ask through you for Director Graham to look into this so that I'm 100% correct. In the last year and throughout the budget process for 2018, there was a discussion that I had never heard before at the region, and it was about master planning on a much, much bigger scale. And specifically, the topic was around Thorold and that area by the 406. So the question that I would want to know about is, in fact, what does that new planning model look like? And what impact will it have on municipalities of our size getting our share? And I mean that in terms of how long it's going to take for our turn to come up. Because right now, we've got a 10-year master plan. They basically know what the plan is, and they know that we're going to come forward with about the same amount of dollars each year, or relatively speaking, on projects. And we know there's design work and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. EA's design work and the job. So what I'd like to know is whether or not this new way of looking at regional plans is going to have a bearing on the cycle of work that's going to get done in the municipalities. I mean, I would wonder if we're going to be waiting 2 or 3 years longer for things. So that may not be the case. I don't want to be fear-mongering. From a regional perspective, what they've suggested makes very good sense, and I think that they will end up with an area ready for development in a way that they haven't been before. But I can't imagine that there wouldn't be an impact on us. So I'd like to know a little bit more about that. If you don't feel it's appropriate for it to come up that night, okay, I understand that, but I think there's something there. I don't know whether Mr. CAO has something to say. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I think some of these are the conversations we're having around the CAO table as well, so I'm not sure if it's infrastructure specific or it's that evening specific, but part of it is just a broader master servicing study that the region is doing, no different than we're looking at in terms of our servicing study. And part of that also flows out of, once they deal with the appeal, their own DC study, which has increased the amount of DCs they're going to be collecting from development, which hopefully offsets the works that need to be done and ensures that everyone gets their fair share. But I think they're all good points, Mary Easton, and maybe I'll have a discussion with both Kathleen and Dave and determine at what committee we come back with kind of the impacts of that. But it probably at the region also involves more than just the Public Works Department. I think the Planning Commissioner is also very much involved in the two pieces, and I would suggest Finance as well as it relates to the DC piece. So a little more wholesome, but maybe something for a committee of the whole that we could come back with in terms of what are the impacts of some of those works.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think that I think this could have be really a singular thing that could have a huge impact in the way we project our ability to put money in reserves, how it'll affect our debt carrying charges and even our debt levels, which may end up decreasing just by virtue of the fact that we have to wait longer. So I look forward to that coming forward. I think that's going to be a really important piece for council to understand. Thank you.
Any other inquiries? Seeing none, are there any announcements? There are no closed session for this evening's agenda.